Salutations and welcome, friends. I'm your host, Matthew DeSantis, and welcome to Amalfi Sports, where this week we are previewing and making picks for a huge set of graded stakes races for the opening weekend at Saratoga. That's right, we're headed up to the spa, and it's highlighted by the premier turf race in the country, maybe outside of the Breeders' Cup, which is the Diana. I'll also be previewing and making picks for the very crowded Grade 3 Sanford Stakes. Very exciting, the Sanford Stakes. This is an exciting group of 2-year-olds. They've all mostly just run one race. This is an opportunity to start scouting next year's Triple Crown contenders. So always excited to do that. That's really one of the joys of Saratoga opening up, is following those 2-year-olds and through all of the different races that they have for them throughout the year. Now, of course, this is a big day on Saturday for racing across the Northeast, across the country, because Del Mar's opened up out in California, and we're going to get out there in a couple of weeks for some of their races. But there's also another video that you can watch where I make previews and picks for a very exciting day at Monmouth Park in New Jersey, which features a pair of Grade 1 races in the United Nations Stakes, and of course the $1 Million Haskell Stakes that features a lot of Triple Crown runners, as well as the Grade 3 Molly Pitcher Stakes. So you can get that video by going to Amalfi's YouTube channel, pressing that subscribe button, and you can get all of our weekly handicapping videos. And more importantly, we got a lot coming up, folks. We're going across the pond to England for some races. We're going to Del Mar, Santa Anita. We're even doing local tracks like Colonial Downs, Charlestown Downs, things like that. And we're also going to be lining up interviews for people who are in the horse racing business to bring to you. So a lot of great stuff here at Amalfi, and I hope you take the time to subscribe and check out all that we have to offer. So before we dive into handicapping some of these races and talking about them a little bit, I do want to talk a little bit about some potential stories that are affecting Saratoga. First, on Saturday, just to be of note, there is maybe some slight concern for weather. There's rain in the forecast on both Friday and Saturday. Not overwhelming chances, 30 or 40% chance. Something to keep in mind. Shouldn't impact the surfaces too much. The opening day on Thursday, paces looked good. They moved one race off the turf because of some rain on Wednesday, but by and large, I think things look pretty strong. So turf and track is in good condition. So even a little bit of a shower on Thursday or Friday should not affect things too terribly much. And so we're not looking for consistent showers for very long. So just something to keep in mind, though, certainly as you're thinking about handicapping, looking at horses' previous experiences, things like that. The other thing to consider is, Saratoga has certain tendencies, and it'll be interesting to see whether or not there's certain carryover information from what happened last year at Saratoga to what happens this year. For instance, last year, coming out of the one hole was a curse. And it just was a dead rail, and it was a huge thing. And you just didn't see horses winning from that one post position almost at all. And so is that something that's going to carry over to this year? We'll see. It's not something that necessarily has historically always been the case, something we saw last year in the numbers. But again, it'll be interesting to see whether or not that dead rail issue continues for this year. The other thing is there are certain jockeys who were very hot last year. I know I mentioned this on a previous video. I felt like Irad Ortiz won every race at Saratoga. Guess what? First race, opening day, guess who wins? Irad Ortiz Jr. So, maybe some trends are going to continue to keep going this year. Who knows? Seems to just like that track, know that track well. But certainly there are some other very, very hot jockeys and very strong jockeys who are out in this field, and we're going to talk about those. So this is an exciting time. Saratoga just has a slew of great races that we're going to be covering in great depth here. The Alfred Vanderbilt, the Alabama, the Whitney, obviously the Travers, the Sword Dancer, the Jim Dandy. I mean, you could just keep going on and on and on. We're going to be previewing all of those races this summer, and I have some good inside information that I might even be up there one weekend to visit a good friend of mine who lives about a mile from the track. So that should be a lot of fun to get up there and maybe even try to make some videos and do some content from up there and partner with some different people in the horse racing business to do some cross collaboration. So it should be a lot of fun getting up there to Saratoga. All right, but let's get into the graded stakes races. And let's start with a very crowded grade 3 Sanford Stakes. And let's take a look at that field. And this is 6 furlongs on dirt for 2-year-olds. This is exciting to me. Always exciting to think about the 2-year-olds just starting out their horse racing careers, seeing where they could go. But a very crowded field. And I'll just run through it very quickly. Starting out with Wit, which is trained by Todd Pletcher, jockeyed by Irad Ortiz Jr., and is the opening line favorite. Followed Wit is Candy Landing, which is trained by Brendan Walsh, jockeyed by James Graham. Then Catch the Smoke, trained by Wayne Potts and jockeyed by Dylan Davis. Trust Our Journey, Carlos David and Eric Cancel are the connections there. Dance Code, trained by Juan Vasquez and jockeyed by Jose Lezcano. Then Marilyn Brando, who is trained by Gary Contessa and jockeyed by Carol Cedeno. Then you have Ottoman Empire, which is trained by Thomas Amos and jockeyed by Jose Ortiz, Irad's brother. And then you have Du Vinny, with Kelly Breen and Luis Saez as the connections there. And then Headline Report, trained by Wesley Ward, who's been putting out a lot of winners lately, and jockeyed by John Vasquez. In the 10-hole, you have Kavad, trained by James Chapman, jockeyed by the always aggressive Manny Franco. In the 11-hole, you have Seize the Night, trained by Dallas Stewart and jockeyed by John Court. And then finally rounding out this very crowded and ambitious field is Lucago, which is trained by Antonio Sanyo and jockeyed by Junior Alvarado. So that is the field. And like I said, it is a large field. And we're not going to go through and talk about every single one of those 12 horses, partially because a lot of them have only run one race. So there's a lot of unknowns still in this field. But I do want to highlight a few horses that I think are intriguing or that might be chasing some false money. And so I want to try to give you a little bit of both there. So we'll start with right in the 1-hole. I just talked about a dead rail, but the winner or the morning line favorite, Wit, going off at 8-5. This is an impressive horse. Has the speed, has the pedigree. Of all the horses in the field, put up the best buyer speed number in their first race, ran a 70. Typically, you see horses improve significantly from their first to their second race. A lot of times they're pretty green and just getting used to going around the track in a competitive way, just being loaded into the gate, doing everything. Again, there's a maturation process. Now, that said, we just saw on opening day a horse trained by Steve Asmussen, Speedometer, who kind of rears his head as he comes down the stretch. He did it in his first race, and we go, oh, well, he'll fix it in the second race. Well, no, he reared his head again in the second race. So sometimes these horses have these quirks early on in their careers. We'll see if Speedometer is able to actually work through that quirk or not. But Wit is a horse that didn't have any quirks. This is a horse that really put away the field first time out. The Pletcher or Rad Ortiz combo is a very strong one. Going to a new track, so had been running at Belmont, training at Belmont. How it takes to Saratoga certainly is a question. Part of the reason I do like Wit a lot is that first race was at 5.5 furlongs. Some of these horses, their first races were at 4.5 furlongs. So taking a step up to 6, a little bit more distance, how the horses respond to that. Going from 5.5 to 6, not that much of a jump. So I do like this. Death of the inside rail at Saratoga, it's something to keep in mind. I think for a one-turn race, it might not be quite as big of a deal. And I also think the fact that there's so much, it's a 2-year-old race, is part of the reason why it's not going to be as much of a problem. So let's also take a look at the 2-horse Candy Landing, going off at 7-2. A lot of speed for this horse, really jumps off the page, has run very, very strong numbers in terms of those buyer speed numbers. But the fractions were even faster than Wit's. The thing is, that final furlong that Candy Landing ran in the first race, you could tell laboring a little bit, was going a little bit slower. And so this is a horse that I have a feeling will get out very fast, will be the early speed, along with perhaps Trust Our Journey. Both of them, I have a feeling, are going to get out very fast. I mean, they were running 21-4 first quarter of a miles. So I expect them to be the early speed in this race. And, we'll see if other horses catch up. This is a little bit of a classier race, obviously, than what they all ran in their first competition. So you have a horse like Wit. You have some other horses I'm going to talk about. Candy Landing getting out fast. Are other horses going to be able to catch up with her as they put on a move coming down the stretch? Understandable why he's going off at 7-2 based on the buyer speed numbers, clearly the second best horse in this race, but just something to keep in mind. Will this horse maybe not be able to handle the speed very well? But like Wit, went 5.5 furlongs, trains at 5 furlongs. So a lot to like there. I mentioned Trust Our Journey. This is a horse I think has early speed, but I do not foresee this horse being a factor. I think this horse is going to become exclusively a sprint horse, and I just don't think maybe even 6 furlongs is too much. So don't love that horse, particularly even at 15-1. Now, I will tell you a horse that I like going off at 10-1, and that's Ottoman Empire. I like Ottoman Empire. Like the speed numbers for this horse. I like fractions that he can put up. I like the fact that the fractions were very consistent. Very strong first race at 5 furlongs. Additionally, this is a horse that's been getting workouts at Saratoga. I like that. Saratoga can be a little bit of a quirky course sometimes. So it's nice that these horses get some time there, get a workout in there. I think that's a really beneficial thing. So, I like Ottoman Empire. I still think Wit's the class of this field, but I do like Ottoman Empire quite a bit, and especially at 10-1. There's a lot of value there, I think. Headline Report is another horse that I'll kind of headline and highlight. And that's a horse that's going off at 5-1. Very strong workout numbers. If you look at the workout numbers it's been putting up, strong stuff. Wesley Ward, the trainer, has won 31% of his races this year. Again, a lot to like there. Has been working out at Saratoga. Obviously, it's a little bit more of a step up in class, but you can say that about all of the horses. I do think Headline Report is a horse that is going to end up on the board, certainly worthy of that 5-1 morning line odd. I have a feeling that's going to get bet down a little bit. So I don't know if I love that horse at a lower number. At 5-1, though, I certainly like that horse quite a bit. And I also want to highlight the 10 horse Cavad, which is going off at 20-1. This is a horse that's the most raced horse in the field, has run 3 times, has won once. Manny Franco's an aggressive jockey. He's going to put Cavad in a good position. The issue with Cavad, and I think part of the reason that Cavad might be an intriguing long shot is you might say, listen, a lot of these horses have just run one race. Here's a horse that's run 3, has a little bit more experience, knows what to do, isn't going to be as green on the racetrack. Maybe he's going to put in a more consistent performance. Maybe. The problem is we've not seen that progression out of Cavad. I mentioned with Wit putting up that initial 70 buyer speed number. We expect to see progress in the second race. We saw Cavad go from a 58 to a 60. Minimal improvement from race 2 to race 3. Didn't even have a buyer speed number in the first race. So, he's a horse that I have a feeling is going to get bet down from 20-1 just because people are going to go, oh, well, there's more maturation or there's more experience there. People, in a 2-year-old race, people kind of cling on to some things like that. I just don't see that being a very wise bet. So who do I like betting in the Sanford? Well, I'll be honest. Give me Irad Ortiz on the rail. I don't really care about what has happened in years past. So I like the 1-7-9-2 as the superfecta. I like the 1 Wit to win. I like Ottoman Empire. I like that horse a lot, actually. That's a horse I'm really intrigued by. I like that horse to place. I like Headline Report to show. And I like Candy Landing, who I think is going to set the early speed and might end up lagging a little bit at the end to round out the top 4. So that's the Sanford Stakes. But listen, what everybody's going to the track for on Saturday is, of course, the premier turf race in the country, the Diana Stakes. And the Diana Stakes, let me just say right off the bat, I'm not even sure I should be doing a preview for the Diana Stakes. I should have just say, who does Chad Brown train? And that's who's going to win the race. Because Chad Brown has won the last 5, count them 5, Diana Stakes races. That is absolutely incredible. Has won 6 overall, 5 in a row. unbelievable stretch and that streak that he is on. But let's take a look at the field because Chad Brown has a couple of horses in this race and in this field that I think are very intriguing. So we'll start off with La Signare, a French horse trained by Brandon Walsh and jockeyed by Ricardo Santana. Pocket Square, a British horse trained by the aforementioned Chad Brown and jockeyed by John Velasquez. Coming in then at the 3-hole is Magic Attitude, another British horse, trained by Arnaud Delacour, jockeyed by Jose Castellano. Then you have Vigilante's Way, which is trained by Claude McGaughey III and jockeyed by Jose Ortiz. You have 5, and really the second half of this field is incredibly strong. Harvey's Little Goyle, trained by Bill Mott, jockeyed by Jose Alvarado. Then you have, Junior Alvarado. Then you have Summer Romance, trained by Charles Appleby, jockeyed by Luis Saez. La Mista, trained by Chad Brown, jockeyed by Arad Ortiz Jr. And then rounding out Althika, trained by Charles Appleby, jockeyed by Manny Franco. Those 4 horses are outstanding. 5 through 8, that's where the class is going to come from. Not to say 1 through 4 doesn't have some good horses, but post positions 5 through 8, man alive, that's a strong second half of the field. So let's actually spend some time breaking down these horses a little bit, starting with the 1-horse Signare, going off at 15-1. This is an extremely consistent horse. That's what I can say about it. Puts up very consistent buyer speed numbers, does not have the high-end speed numbers to tell me that it can compete in this race. But you know what La Signare always ends up doing? Always gets on the board. Always comes in second or third or fourth. Like, this is a horse that just always ends up part of your bets, part of your parlays. So, there's something to like there. This is the 5th jockey in 5 races. That said, Ricardo Santana rode her a lot last year in 2020. So certainly the jockey is very familiar with the horse. So we'll see. I do like La Signare, though, quite a bit, and to potentially, especially at that price, to maybe pop up on the board. So something to keep in mind. So moving to 2, Pocket Square. I feel like this really reflects the trainer more than anything else. Because when you compare Pocket Square to La Signare, you can't convince me that this horse is that much better than La Signare that's going off at 15-1. I'm just not going to buy it. The speed numbers are fine, but they haven't improved since Chad Brown took over training her 3 races ago. Additionally, this is a horse that lost to Althika, lost to Summer Romance last time out. At 8-1, I just don't like the value I'm seeing there. So in the 3-horse, we have Magic Attitude. This is a little bit more of an intriguing horse to me in terms of ending up on the board. She had a bad last trip out, but it was on yielding turf conditions. Not all horses do well, and a lot of horses don't do well under those conditions. So it was a pretty wet surface. Before that was a Grade 2 winner, won a Grade 1 race last year. Distance isn't an issue. As she moves, this time around. And she seems to be doing consistently better on a firm turf. It's interesting. Whenever she's not on a firm turf, not great results. Even if it's just a good turf, it's not great results. If it's a firm turf, you see this horse really take to the firm turf quite well. But again, I think there's something intriguing there. She's had one bad hiccup, but other than that, there's something to like about Magic Attitude, potentially at 12-1. At that price is not bad. Vigilante's Way, going off at 20-1, won a Grade 3 race last time out, but has never gone a mile in an 1/8. That is a concern. The last race out was the best effort ever. Now, perhaps you'll say, well, then she's peaking at the right time. Maybe. Or it's a bit of a anomaly. It's a bit of an outlier. History would suggest, if you set aside that one race, she's quite a ways away from being with the top-tiered horses, and I think the odds reflect that. I think 20-1 is probably about a right number for him. So then let's go to the back half of this field, which is incredibly impressive. Let's start with Harvey's Little Goyle, going off at 3-1. This is a very good horse that had a very strong showing at the Grade 3 Boguet back in May. And I would say if that was his last race, he'd probably come in as the favorite. And even ahead of La Mista. and probably Alfica too. Um, but he ran a race after that and didn't put in his best effort. It was a yielding turf surface, so again, not great necessarily for conditions. Was run at a mile and a quarter, so a little bit longer. Um, Again, if you had this race earlier, but if Harvey's Little Goyle hadn't run that previous race, probably would be looked at a little bit more favorably. Um, so there was a step back there, but other than that, this horse seemed to be peaking, seemed to be having ever increasing buyer speed numbers, doing better every time. This is also a horse that's 2 for 2 at a mile and an eighth, so seems to like this distance. So there's a lot to like with Harvey's Little Goyle. I think this is a strong horse. And I'm willing to throw out that last race performance just because of the surface and the fact that it was a pretty yielding surface. We're not going to see that on Saturday at Saratoga. Also, despite the setback, still put up a very respectable buyer speed number, just not what it had been. So coming in then after that is Summer Romance, coming in at that 5-hole. This is the speed in the race. Summer Romance loves to get out fast. This is a stablemate with Alfica, but Summer Romance loves to get out quick and is the speed in this race. Now, I will say, Saratoga, you can sometimes favor speed, and it's possible she goes wire to wire because when he's won, it's been wire to wire. So that is one of the things to keep in mind with Summer Romance. That wire to wire is very much so a possibility. That said, and there's always a that said, this is a very strong class of horses in this field with La Mista, with Harvey's Little Goyle, even with La Signare. It's a very strong class. I don't think Summer Romance is going to be able to pull off a wire to wire. That said, at 4-1, I actually like the price because a mile and an eighth is not undoable to go wire to wire, and there is that tendency. Now, the one thing I'll tell you about Summer Romance, because Summer Romance and Alfica have raced against each other quite a few times. When Summer Romance wins, when Summer Romance beats Alfica, the difference is that Summer Romance does not get out too fast. When Summer Romance gets out too fast, sometimes it almost seems like the jockey loses the horse because Summer Romance gets out 2-3 lengths ahead of everyone. And that's when Summer Romance really tires and you see the other horses catching up. When Summer Romance sets the pace, but is right there with everybody else and is not 3 lengths ahead of the rest of the field, that's the recipe for being able to actually go wire to wire. So I'll be very interested to watch the pace for Summer Romance. It's going to be the early speed. The question is, does Summer Romance have a controlled early speed and be able to sit down on the rail, save ground, and also not run away from the other horses during the early parts of the race, only to tire out at the end? I think that's something to keep in mind as you're watching the race. So let's get to the final two. La Mista, Chad Brown's best bet to keep the streak alive. Can he go for 6 in a row? And so last time out, this is a horse that ran a very game second place to Harvey's Little Goyle, was gaining on Harvey's Little Goyle down the stretch. If you watch that race, another maybe furlong, probably La Mista wins. Additionally, that was La Mista's first race after coming over from Europe. So this is a horse that you would expect to see improve from that first time out in the United States to the second time out. You see that with a lot of Chad Brown horses. You see that with a lot of turf horses. So there's something to say. If she ran that well, that horse ran that well the last time out, reason to think that it's going to be able to run that strongly the next time, or even better the next time out. So something to keep in mind. Very good on distance. That's not going to be an issue for La Mista. So a lot to like about this horse at 5-2. I actually like the odds quite a bit, although I would imagine those odds are going to get bet down quite a bit come post time. And then let's wrap up with Alfica. Good horse. Again, another horse you'd expect to see with improvement. This is a horse, again, running its second race in the United States. So you'd expected to see a little bit better, a little bit more accustomed to things the next time out. Stablemate, as I mentioned, of Summer Romance. One of the things you'll see about Alfica will come from off the pace. Typically sits third to last. it's really interesting how the last 3 races, Alfico's always sat third to last around pretty much the entire track, then puts on a run. Now, what I'll say is this is a very high level of competition. Coming from off the pace against a high level of competition is always a little bit of a question mark. You're running against very, very strong horses in this race. Are you going to have enough to lap the field, come from all the way from behind, especially if Summer Romance is setting a strong pace, especially if a horse like La Mista is setting a pretty strong pace as well? How are you going to be able to come up from off the pace? Harvey's Little Goyle is going to be coming from off the pace a little bit as well. So there's a lot there with Alfica that I just go, we'll see. I like the horse a lot. A very, very impressive stretch kick. But something that I'm fascinated in. The other thing to point out, a lot of people want to talk about La Mista, Chad Brown. A lot of people think it might be the favorite. If you go back and look at the European speed numbers, Alfica consistently ran better European speed numbers than La Mista. Now, the last time out, they ran very comparable speed numbers in the United States. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. It's a very, very tough race to bet, I think, because there's a lot. I would box everything in this race. I do not feel overwhelmingly confident in the necessary order, but in terms of who I'm picking, I'm going to go 7, 8, 5, and 1. So I am going to go with La Mista to win, Alfica to place, Harvey's Little Goyle to show, and I like La Signare. As I said, always has a tendency to finish in the top 3 or 4. So I do like La Signare to come in 4. And I think that's where you can find some value. Because I think what you're going to find is La Mista, Alfica, Harvey's Little Goyle are going to really be bet down quite considerably. You're not going to get a lot of value there. I think you'll get that with La Signare. I like Summer Romance. I mentioned that horse earlier. I'm just worried at that pace. There's enough class in this field. I just have a feeling that's going to be a very close 3rd, 4th, 5th finish. I think La Mista and Alfica pull away a little bit. I think 3 through 5 could be a photo or just be very, very closely contested. So that's the way I see the Diana playing out in the first weekend at Saratoga. But listen, that's all I have for today. But remember to tune back next week because we have so many more of these. And next week, folks, we're going to jolly old England. That's right. Who cares about the Open Championship, or as Americans like to call it, the British Open? Who cares about the Euro Cup? We're going over to Ascot, baby. We're going over for the Princess Margaret Stakes and the King George VI, Queen Elizabeth Stakes. It should be a lot of fun. I love waking up and getting horse racing. But we have a lot of previews coming on down the stretch from Del Mar to Saratoga to Colonial Downs to Charlestown Downs to Santa Anita and a whole lot more. I can't wait to get up to Saratoga, see some of the races up there this summer. That's going to be a blast. Just a stacked lineup between all of the graded stakes races there and all of the ones out at Del Mar as well. And the best way you can get all of these videos is to go to Amalfi YouTube and press that subscribe button to follow Amalfi Sports and all of our horse racing coverage. So until next time, enjoy your day at the races. And I'm Matthew DeSantis, and it's now post time.